Hi guys, welcome back to Let's Talk with Brian and Tia. Today we have a special guest with us, our really good friend Eka, who is a mental health professional. Eka, do you want to tell everyone your title and what you do?
Yes, I am registered with the Board of Behavioral Sciences in California, so I'm an associate marriage and family therapist.
So today she's going to be helping us kind of break down how we see mental health, how we notice it in our relationship, and how we notice it amongst our partners.
Absolutely. Ek, thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here.
Yay!
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And before we get started too, I forgot to tell you guys, we are drinking the McBride Sisters today, rosé. And so we're trying it out and seeing how we like it. So we're gonna cheers to the McBride Sisters because they're a black-owned wine company, and we're gonna cheers our Let's Talk glasses and coasters.
Like I say on every video, if you haven't picked up your Let's Talk glasses, your Let's Talk shot glasses, coasters, you guys check in our bio. We have the link to the website for you guys to order. And shout out to everybody that's ordered so far. We appreciate you guys for support. So let's hop right into it. Mental health and relationships. We know mental health has become a more prevalent topic now in the world. And so if we talk about how it affects relationships, why do you think that's important in relationships, Ed?
I mean, just like anything with recognizing patterns and changes and behaviors that your partner has, you would want to recognize their emotional instabilities as well.
Right.
It's difficult because specifically when we're talking about people of color, or we'll talk about, in the black community, when we see mental health, in many ways we don't see it. We ignore it. It's stigmatized, it's demonized. And if you talk about historically, black families have been taught to deal with emotions by going to church, spirituality-wise. There's certain mental health diagnoses and emotions that you just can't only deal with solely spiritually, because there's like a cognitive effect of it. There's like different pervasive developmental disorders and things like that. So recognizing what are those patterns, what are those emotions, what are the things that you're seeing in your partner that signify something that may be more than just what's wrong with you today, or because they may not even be able to identify what that is.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the times that's the issue, is that in relationships it's hard to identify like what aspect is mental health or considered mental health, right? Not understanding that probably all of this shit is encompassed in a mental health aspect, right? Like something as simple as like getting frustrated because of certain behaviors that you do. You know what I mean?
No, I would agree, because I know like in past parts of our relationship, like when I was like feeling like depressed or I had like my anxiety high, I think that because it's not something that's like normalized, like Brian didn't necessarily know to pinpoint to that. And I think growing up understanding, like, I think it being super taboo for African Americans in our culture and our growing up, I think also when I would bring it to him, I think sometimes he didn't really know what to do with that information either. And like, are you sure you're, this, or won't you try just doing that? And sometimes when people have struggle with their mental health, sometimes things that may be good for you might necessarily just be okay for me to do. Like I might legitimately need therapy. You know what I mean? Like I might legitimately need antidepressant, depressant. And so like sometimes, I think sometimes because we don't talk about it all the time, we see it and we don't really understand that, okay, this is what it is. You know what I mean? Unless we kind of start having a conversation about it.
Right.
Absolutely. And to piggyback more off of that as well is not taking it as, as partners in relationships, we all know when we notice those patterns and them differences in our partner, it's easy for us to say, what's wrong with you or what's wrong with me? Like, is it a me thing? Is it a you thing? And then what is it? Like trying to pinpoint what that is. And again, like when it comes to emotional instabilities, like it's a matter of you even wanting to be vulnerable and share what that emotion is, like, or you trying to identify what it is. Like there's some things that are like black and white, like if you lost a job, if a change in finances, you lost a loved one, like the adverse reaction to that is going to be, maybe some sadness, some frustration, but then it's like the reoccurrence of it. So like when you talked about depression, like depression, if you think of it in a way of like a physical ailment like diabetes, it doesn't get cured per se. You find better ways to manage, you find better ways to cope, and hope that those episodes don't more frequently reoccur.
I agree.
Thanks.
I agree. And I think that's why I, like, through the years of growing as a person, I've, like, been learned to be more vocal. Like, if I feel like, I'm like, I feel like this is making me feel like I'm gonna be depressed. Like, but before I wouldn't be afraid to say that because I'm like, I don't want to, like, put pressure or feel like I'm, like, complaining or
Being weak.
being weak. Yeah, because, you know, obviously I'm the mom and the black woman in the house. I gotta be strong. But sometimes I'm like, I just gotta, like, get under the cover and cry for, like, 10 days, you know.
Right.
But because I wouldn't express that and I didn't have room to do that or I felt like it, because I would hold it in, it also wasn't giving him opportunity to actually react to me and say, oh, well, let me see, this is how you feel and let me pick up the load. But now that I notice that I'll express it when those moments come up, he'll step in or he'll say, okay, it's okay, let's take deep breaths or let's chill, you know what I mean? Like, and so it'll help me and allow me to have space to feel how I'm feeling, but it doesn't mean I have to go into a depression. And now I don't find myself in that space anymore because I'm vocal about it, and when I'm feeling like all the pressures, I'm like, okay, I'm not liking this, or this is too much for me. You know what I mean?
Continuing in that direction, what do you guys feel like are the impacts of ignoring when your partner is showing mental health or displaying that they need assistance with their mental health?
I mean, for example, like if you're depressed and like Tia said, like wanting to not show that and being like hesitant to be vulnerable can bring on some feelings of like helplessness, like feeling alone, like no one's gonna understand me, like who do I talk to? So then if you do decide to be vulnerable and you share that with your partner and it's still being ignored, like it's like a double disappointment.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. My partner doesn't know what to do with me, and now it's even more like self-blame, self-doubt,
Yeah.
lack of confidence, and it just exacerbates some symptoms.
Yeah, 100%. I can definitely speak to that. I do remember Tia being in a space where she felt like she couldn't express to me, and I'm sure there was a mental health aspect to that, and maybe how I responded or reacted to her feeling like she was feeling overwhelmed or feeling anxious. And so now if I'm telling you need to be strong in moments where you don't feel strong, that's not helping the situation out at all.
So some of the couples that I see, like there's always one person who may be the one that's more motivated to come and
Right.
to attend, and then there's one who may have more of an understanding of what mental health is, and oftentimes there's the other partner may not even believe in mental health. Like for them, that's just like what you said, a sign of weakness, or you just being vulnerable or emotional and unstable. So that's part of the support
Absolutely.
that you were speaking of too when you're asking about how does that impact relationships.
Yeah, facts. So with that being said, do you believe that a relationship can be successful when there's one person that doesn't necessarily believe in the mental health component of relationships, or how it impacts us individually and daily and in our relationships? Do you think that's possible?
I believe it is possible, but it does take like some good working and understanding of what is it like for you when you're feeling angry. Like if we don't want to put a title to it and say that's a an emotional response or that's a mental health diagnosis or what have you, like because the diagnosis part just kind of throws people
It
off.
definitely throws people off.
Like,
I'm not depressed.
Yo, that's the first thing people say.
I'm not
crazy.
I'm not crazy.
I'm not crazy.
But I mean, again,
Or like,
going
I
back
feel
to
so
the black
crazy.
community, that's what we were taught too. You know,
Yeah.
mental health is seeing the people on Skid Row downtown talk to themselves, or the people
Facts.
who are like, on a bad trip from some drugs. Like
Belligerent,
those are the
screaming,
people
yelling, yeah.
that have mental health.
Facts.
Me, mental health, no. Like I just get a little angry, punch walls, and break stuff, but
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong there.
Like,
Yeah.
sure.
It's like, okay, but that is an emotional response.
Yeah.
But I do think it can be successful as long as you're able to channel, like, okay, so if you don't want to say you're depressed, if you're feeling sad, or when you feel sad, some people show their sadness through anger.
Yeah.
Most of the time, or they show their sadness maybe compulsively shopping, or compulsively drinking, or compulsively engaging in like drugs or other like negative coping skills. And so it's like when you're feeling a type of way, because that's what everybody say, I'm feeling some type of way. When you're feeling a type of way, how do you respond?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? And what type of support do you need? Like,
Yeah.
do you need someone to talk to you? Do you need to be by yourself?
Yeah.
What is your escape? How do you
Yeah.
get through?
I think you mentioned it, like coping skills are so important when you talk about just how you deal with your mental health aspects of just yourself and you know, with someone in a relationship. But I think more importantly yourself, figuring out how you cope when you are in the emotion that you're in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that that's huge. And you know, I've previously worked in mental health, and I still struggle with like identifying when I'm having a mental health spell, or even being supportive sometimes when I feel like I'm seeing mental health symptoms being displayed. It's really hard in relationships, because it's one thing to like identify it in yourself, but it's another thing to support somebody while they're having or going through mental health experiences or symptoms.
Absolutely, and there can be some pushback there too, because I talk about this with my colleagues, and even when I went to therapy, my therapist would talk about that, you know, in her experience, like when you are a therapist in a relationship and the role that plays too, you know, your partner can feel that you're always assessing them,
Oh, facts.
Yeah.
judging them,
Facts.
or
Yeah.
trying to recognize what's going on with them. And I think it's innate in nature, just as a nurturing person, but also if you are a therapist,
Of course.
It's
like,
natural to you. That's why you're a
I'm
therapist.
doing
you're
my job.
natural, like you're always doing it.
I just love to do this.
Yeah, I just want to know what's wrong with you all the
Okay.
time. And it's like, but then also understanding, like, sometimes you have to remember, or I have to remember even myself, like, what I'm not always with my clients. Like, you know, it is not that that's not real life, but what happens in your relationship is also important to be able to specify and compartmentalize that too. Like,
That's huge.
and understanding,
Yeah.
like, this just may not be the right time to always be
Yes.
in assessment mode.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like, and
yeah.
more so just kind of focus on, be
supportive.
present and be
Yeah.
supportive.
Yeah.
So, but that is something that therapists get a lot of like hang up about, like when they're in relationships is, and they may be in a relationship where their partner is totally like, I don't believe in mental health. Like, I know that's your line of work and that's great, but I don't believe in it. And
Yeah.
so then finding a way to navigate that too.
Right.
Right. So, with that being said, as far as you say, you believe that it's possible to carry on a successful relationship when, you know, another person may not necessarily believe in the mental health.
So do we do
Component.
code words and trick them? Like, okay, I know. Okay, not depression. Let's just say
Maybe
sad.
you're just not feeling it today. No, but I think it's just important to say, like, to just be in the here and now, be in the moment, and be present with what's happening, and like paying attention. Like,
Right.
if you're gonna be on assessment mode always, then understanding that that person is not for that,
Mhm.
you know, or may not want to look at what's happening for that, and just take the situation for what it is.
Facts.
And not try to, and something that we always tell couples too is like, you don't have to push mental health to your partner just because you believe in it. They have to come into their own journey.
That is so true.
Just as you did in session.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
always remind clients of that. Just as you had to get comfortable with me to build that rapport and open up, you have to allow them. And like, I have a few clients who, like, it took them some time to get to that point.
Right.
Their partner may have been the one that was like, I think you should go. It'll be helpful for you. It's helpful for me. And once they saw their journey, then they were able to take a step back and say, wow, like, you've had so much growth. And so now I want to adopt that too. And then, you know, you find people who are willing to compromise about mental health.
Right. And what?
And,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Sweetie.
And I think also it's vice versa too, right?
Mhm.
Because you have a partner that's like, okay, I need to go to therapy. This is important to me. And if their partner's like, oh well, like, I don't understand, or they feel like maybe you don't need that. I think also partners allowing their partners to go on their journey, especially if they're not putting it on them.
To
you know what I mean?
to
go.
attend, yeah.
Right.
But just saying, like, I just think this is good for me.
For me.
But I think the pressures of when you feel like you're doing something for yourself and you kind of feel like your partner is not supporting it, it kind of feels really, really bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No.
It can make you kind of feel like you're going backwards. And you're not, you want to please everyone, including, when the ultimate goal is to please yourself. It's just uncomfortable when you're pleasing yourself and you know your partner is not really supporting you through the process.
Yeah, especially if you're taking that time to say, like, I want to work on myself to be a better individual, not just to me, but in our relationship
everyone.
Right.
and in our family. and then you learn all these tools and you're doing all this good work, and then it's like but you're met with challenge when you're at home or in the relationship. It's like you said, you feel like you're regressing. Like you have a good 50-minute session, and then you come home, and then your partner is like constantly challenge you. I mean, that's when you get to put the work in and
100%.
and display those coping skills and things that you're learning. But the other thing that we always tell couples too is that, well, I'll say for me, I don't even see a couple unless they've both done individual therapy. Like either they're currently in their own individual therapy while we're seeing each other as a couple, or they've had some recent previous experience. Because when you come to couples counseling, then it becomes a blame game, you know, and you haven't had the opportunity to self-reflect, and so you don't know what that's like, and then you may feel attacked by the therapist or even by your partner.
What are some ways you think you identify when you need to take like a mental health break in your relationship, and do you advise your clients to do that?
I more so just advise self-care. Like, and what does self-care look like? Everyone has different self-care regimens. Like, if it's pampering yourself, going to the spa, going to the gym, working out, going for a drive, just having some me time and just really, honing in on yourself, like, that's your self-care regimen. Then find opportunities to do that. Like, and don't feel like you're at fault for wanting to take whatever that time is, because you can't be the best person to anyone. You can't be the best partner. You can't be the best parent, therapist if you're not getting your own health in order.
I think that's huge in relationships too, because there is a stigma around taking time to yourself. I was talking to a homegirl of mine, and she shared like she's always in mom mode, but her husband feels like that's what she's supposed to be doing all the time, is being a mom, and it's hard to help him understand that this is not the only role that I play. I'm also a student or a creative, whatever it is that I like to do. I'm not just a mom all the time.
Absolutely. Like, because before you were a mom, who were you? But, when you talk about women, particularly like women who deal with postpartum depression, that is part of the experience. Like, who am I now?
Oh, yeah.
What is this role that I'm stepping into? What does this look like? Can I fail?
Yeah.
Did I fail? Like, if my baby didn't sleep well last night or didn't latch on well if they're breastfeeding, like, am I failing as a mother? If I had to have a cesarean versus a vaginal birth, that's a whole nother experience, and that hormonal change brings on so many different emotions, and some women actually slip into psychosis and where they disassociate and don't even know what's happening. So when we hear about those situations, that's not just, oh, I had a baby and I wasn't ready. Like, it's literally a whole cognitive experience of things that have occurred, and they become this new person. And so it's important to validate that. So like, when you talk about the girl who's always in mom mode, like, did she ever come into herself after having a child? Who this new role is as a mother, and being who I was before while being a mother.
And it's important, you have to just find your voice and speak up, and you have to identify yourself outside of the roles. And I think for so long, I thought that I was running towards what made me feel good, but it was like momentarily, like, oh, I'm gonna go out with my friends, or oh, I'm gonna go, have a drink, or I'm gonna do this. But it was like I ran so far away from like the things that I was, that I just became like first Brian's girlfriend, and then his wife, and then Bradley and Brian's mom. You know what I mean? And then you start thinking like, oh, my name's Atia. Like, oh, I'm a person. Let me figure out what I can do about this. And I think that when you do that, but the support comes because having those conversations and admitting how I felt all the things to Brian, and I feel like, oh my gosh, I can do it. That's where the support comes, to push yourself in a new space. And if you can't express your feelings to your partner, I think that's where it becomes difficult. And so I teeter-totter if it's 100% necessarily. If you can have 100% or successful relationship if one of the parties are supportive to you. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think it's like it's you can do it, but I find myself in the spaces where I didn't feel supportive, where it's like, maybe this isn't for me right now. But I don't know.
So in regards to that, I was going to ask, I know you mentioned like the roles that women sometimes feel like they're stuck in. Do you guys feel like men also go through those same instances or feelings when it comes to mental health or just going through things?
I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think like it's just unfortunate those, you know, men have been taught like you have to be a man first and you got to take care of the house and you have responsibilities and you have to care for the women and children. So
Right.
those emotions that you're feeling, like, you know, that's out the window.
That's
Like, when you don't pay attention to that. And so, like, what do you see men, how do you see men display their frustration or display their emotion? Through anger.
Right.
Like, and not in all cases across the board. There are men who show their emotions in other ways, but most of the time it's anger, like, and it's pent up anger, and then it comes from like other deep rooted places sometimes. And so I think also, like, with men stepping into that role of fatherhood, that's an emotional experience too. Although it's not a hormonal change, but it's still like, what do I do? You know,
Right.
like feeling like who am I now? And then of course, you know, for a lot of men, especially men in our community, are like, I don't want to be like my father,
Right.
like, and leave my child and my family absent.
Right.
You know, so it's a big role to play.
Yeah.
How was that for you? I was gonna ask you, like, how was that,
Oh.
that process for you? Like,
Right.
like stepping in, 'cause, like, we think about like when you became a father, 21 years old, like.
I was gonna say, I think especially just growing up in the community that we grew up, a lot of us not having our fathers around. Believe it or not, a lot of these initial experiences that we have are like emotional experiences, whether it's being a father for the first time or being the first one to graduate from college or get a job. Like, you're doing a lot of the first things in your family, and then you're shifted into a role of having to take care of family. Not that you have to, but if that's the experience you have a kid, you have to take care of a family. And like I said, a lot of the times it's a first for you, so that shit is overwhelming as fuck. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot to take on initially, and then the idea, and we talked about this in a previous episode, like, we also are taught not to show emotion, and so the last thing you're gonna do is bitch, moan, or cry about it. That's how you feel, right? Like, the last thing you're gonna do is show an outward emotion that looks weak. And so Eka mentioned, you know, a lot of the time when we displace these emotions, they come out as anger. And so that seems more manly to display as opposed to, you know, crying about it or talking about it in a way that feels, you know, sad.
Or seeking,
Because
like,
it
some type of
signifies
support.
strength, right? Like,
Right.
how if I'm angry, and you know, how much angrier can you get than me? Like, it becomes like a battle, and that testosterone is like
I'm the man.
rising. Yeah, it's like puffed
Like,
up
okay,
and
God.
all those things. But it's like when
Look
you
crazy.
see that, like, and like when working with children and like teenagers, and I'm sure you remember this, like, you knew that was coming from another place.
Big facts.
Like, when you see kids and teenagers, it's like, okay, I see all that huffing and puffing. You know, that's definitely coming from a different place. But we forget that when they become adults. We think like, well, you're an adult now, you're over
You get
18.
it.
You shouldn't be acting like
Right,
that.
right.
But if you've been told that since you were age 5, age 10, age 15, when you become age 21, like, you still don't know how to display that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so it looks the same.
exactly.
And-
Go ahead, Sue.
No, I think it's good too, because I personally enjoy watching Brian's journey of growth and tapping into himself and taking me time. Because I mean, before it was like I would take the me time I needed. I'm
Yeah.
me, but I would encourage him, like, babe, you have got to get out and you have got to do things for yourself. You have got to take a step away from the house. So like, I get happy when he leaves and he takes moments away and he, you know, go plays basketball or says, oh babe, I'm gonna go meet so and so for lunch. I'm like, yeah, that's good because it's good for you.
I know you have a platform on social media that you guys speak about mental health and share that. Could you share some information on that?
Yes, so I am a member of the Minority Psychology Network, where, you know, we're aiming to break the stigma about mental health surrounding communities of color in particular. We have a mobile unit that's going to launch on the 28th of August, where we're going to go into different communities and be able to provide different services. So like brief therapy, case management, things like that.
That's huge.
And so we've been able to do a lot of advocacy work and share a lot of information to people. We have a Rolodex where people are able to find therapists or find case managers or find even life coaches like Mom. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, let's clap it up for that, because I think that's super dope. Because those are going to be the types of things that normalize
Yes.
mental health in the
our
communities that we
grow
grow
up in. Yeah.
Absolutely. So definitely. So
Yeah.
Eka, thank you
Thank
for
you so
being
much.
Thank
here
you for
today.
having
We
us.
appreciate you being here.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Tia love doing
I
cheers.
love to cheers. Well, I have the glasses if we're not gonna cheers to show them off. Okay.
And don't forget, you guys, as we did last Monday, we'll be going live again to talk on the topic of mental health and relationships. So join us next Monday for that. We appreciate you guys being here. Thank you.
Let's talk.